Like most people who play guitar, we all know you can never have too many guitars in your collection, and now there's so many DIY kits available. I had to order one and just see what they really are like. It's a good winter project. So these pictures are of my finished project, and I'm really amazed how it turned out, both in appearance and its playability. I did a lot of research from other builds and thought I would share the techniques that I used to complete my project, and perhaps you may find them helpful on yours. So I ordered my Telecaster on Amazon, and it was delivered from GTS Guitars in Port Hope, Ontario, to my Ontario home within 5 business days. So I unboxed it and did a quick inventory and inspection of the contents, and was very impressed with the wood used for the body and how tight the neck fit was. I chose to start with the neck as my starting point of the build, and the first step was to find a Telecaster headstock template online. I printed a few styles from Fender guitars over the years and used the template that best lined up with the pre-drilled holes for the machine heads. The shape of the headstock will not allow for an exact replica of the actual Fender neck, but in the end it looked very similar to the template that I selected. To avoid what I consider a catastrophic failure, I felt it best not to use any type of power tool to cut the shape, and used a coping saw to perform the cut. After cutting close to the actual desired shape, I was surprised how easily it sanded to achieve its final look. Before applying the finish to the neck, I masked off the frets and the plastic nut, and gently used a razor blade to trim off the excess tape, and most importantly, after fitting the neck to the body, masked off the neck joint to ensure the factory fit was not compromised. I applied 2 light coats of the product True Oil to the fretboard, and about 4 coats to the back of the headstock and neck. I'd wait about 8 hours between coats, and after letting it cure for a few days, used extra fine steel wool to rub the finish smooth. True Oil is a great product, and I highly recommend it for this project. After unmasking, I mounted the machine heads on the neck. To ensure they are lined up straight, I found it best to install all of them and firmly tighten the nuts in the front. Then, after ensuring they are straight, drill only the start of a very small pilot hole for the screws on the back. Now, the screws they give you for the back of the machine heads obviously aren't of the highest quality, so just when you do go to tighten them, make sure you've got a really good Phillips screwdriver to use to tighten them up. Finally, I surfed the net to get the Fender Telecaster logo I liked, and printed a few test samples for the headstock. The final logo was printed on what is known as water slide paper, and this is basically the same technique that we all used as kids to attach decals to models. After printing on the water slide paper, allow them to fully dry, and then before cutting them out, they'll be sprayed with a couple of coats of clear lacquer to protect the ink from ever being exposed when it's on the guitar. After applying the decal to the headstock, the final step was to carefully coat it with a couple of coats of True Oil to really help hide the edge of the decal itself. Next, it was time to start the process of finishing the body. Again, I was surprised how smooth and blemish-free the body was from the factory. While it certainly needed the finished sanding, the wood once again sanded surprisingly easy to a super smooth finish. I started with 400 paper and found it only needed a final sand of 600 paper to achieve a good surface for paint. Before any paint is applied, it's important to once again mask off the neck joint area to keep the factory fit intact. As with any masking job, take your time as the end result benefits greatly from a few extra minutes spent in preparation. I rigged up a coat hanger and an area in the heated garage to spray a couple of coats of automotive gray primer, and after curing for 24 hours I lightly sanded the primer with 1000 paper, and I did discover there were a few pinholes in the body. These must be filled because your paint will not hide the holes. So I simply used drywall compound to fill them, and then primed the body one more time and sanded with 1000 paper again. After choosing a color for the body, it was a bit of a challenge to find a brand and local supplier that had what I had chosen, so I chose Rust-Oleum lacquer for both the color and the clear coat, and actually found Home Depot had an abundance in stock. Lacquer is very strong and should not be sprayed in an unventilated area. I applied 4 coats of color to the body and did not sand between coats. It had no runs during the process. Your final coat on the front and the back of the guitar should be sprayed while the guitar is in a flat horizontal position, because this will make your paint finish cure simply in the best way. This process was done over a couple of days. The clear coat was applied 6 times over 3 days. It too required absolutely no sanding between coats. I found 6 coats to be plenty for this project, although I have seen some folks apply as many as 12 coats. After the last coat of clear was applied, I considered just leaving the body as is, and did a mock-up of the guitar, and it actually looked quite good. But 24 hours later, and seeing it under both natural and artificial light, I knew it had to be wet sanded and compounded to achieve the result I really wanted. I started with 1500 paper to wet sand the body, and basically got that to the 100% dull finish needed with no low spots remaining shiny. To totally remove any scratches from the 1500 paper, I found a good wet sand with 2000 paper was sufficient to get the final result. Note that it is best to clean off the body and the paper intermittently while you're performing this, and your sanding process will end up much smoother and a better finish overall. The final step on the body was to compound it back to a glowing shine, and I picked up Meguiar's Ultimate Compound, which states on the product itself, it says it's clear coat safe, and I just got this at my local Canadian Tire and simply used a couple of terry towel cloths to apply it. I rubbed it in a circular motion and generously applied the compound to the finish, and this process actually took no time at all, and the clear coat finish looked as good as most any factory finish I've seen. With all the labor-intensive work complete, it was time for the final assembly. The notes in the supplied manual are somewhat vague, so if you have any questions prior to performing these, know that the internet can certainly provide the answers you may be looking for. So first step was to mount the neck. After getting it firmly into the joint, you must pre-drill the 4 holes in the neck before mounting it. So hold it into the body, and you do your drilling that way. But take extreme caution how deep you drill, as you do not want to go through the fretboard, obviously. So set your drill bit length to prevent this from happening. My next step was to mount the neck pickup in the pickguard and to check the fit at the neck. The pickup height is adjustable once mounted through the use of the springs that actually are underneath the pickup and the pickguard itself. I then left this in place, but did not attach it until the bridge controls were in place. This is done to ensure everything is going to end up being aligned straight. The bridge is mounted 23 inches from the inside of the plastic nut to the front edge of the bridge. With the intonation settings, I'm sure this can be a 1/16 of an inch off, but make sure the bridge is mounted squarely to the neck and body. So eyeball it and take a number of measurements before you mark your spots for final attachment. Install the bridge pickup in the bridge, then dry fit it to the cavity of the body, and only pre-drill to get the screws started. This will ensure that your bridge is mounted into the meat of the wood body. I next set the control panel into place to square it up with the bridge, and at the same time I adjusted the pickguard into place. Once all the pieces are straight and in line with each other, the pickguard can be secured in place. I then installed the strings that came with the kit. I use these strings only to have the ability to check my connections after soldering all pickups to the control panel. The supplied strings are absolutely awful and should not be used for anything more than this. It was then time to perform all the soldering connections and to test the controls. Be very careful not to get hot solder on the finish of your guitar body by placing cardboard or something between these areas. Once complete and working, the input jack will be screwed into place. The internet is also a great place to find the proper location for mounting your strap buttons. The last thing I did with the supplied strings still on the guitar was to mount the string saddles on the headstock of the guitar. To ensure these are in the proper location, they need to be installed with the strings just loosely in place. Finally, I installed a good set of Fender extra light strings, and I set the action and the intonation, but would find the guitar still had some issues with some chords in tune and others out. This is a very frustrating scenario I've seen in the past, and the problem always seems to be that the plastic nut on the neck is just far too high. Simply pressing down on the strings to play chords in the first couple of frets distorts the notes, and in turn it will sound terrible. So I swapped out the nut with a new one I already had from my local music store, and all problems were fixed. So the guitar plays simply awesome. I hope you found this video helpful with your project, and remember to please subscribe to my channel, and once again, thanks for watching.